forward. To Mr. David Walker, Medical Center Director, Mr. William Everett, Chief Diversity Inclusion Officer, to my friend, Mrs. Peggy King, Black History Program Manager, to doctors, nurses, administrators, to each of you that makes this essential and beneficial hospital work, and most importantly, to our veterans and their families. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am honored to be with you, and I thank the Black History Program Committee for the invitation and high honor of choosing me to be your speaker this morning. I commend you for your celebration of Black History Month, which, as you know, is an annual celebration recognizing not only the achievements of African Americans throughout history, but the role in which Blacks have played in U.S. history. One such role today is the Black vote. Your chosen theme today is African Americans and the vote. And as I was contemplating last week on what I would say to you this morning while focusing on your theme, I heard a live interview conducted by Dr. Benjamin Chavis, President and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, also known as the Black Press. Dr. Chavis was asking a presidential candidate what he thought about the Black vote. This candidate, Tom Steyer, responded, and I quote, "I believe the Black vote will elect the next president." And then on yesterday, while I was in Charleston, South Carolina, being a participant in an interview with Dr. Chavis, interviewing candidate Joe Biden, I was not surprised when Vice President Biden responded to the same question in a similar way. He too felt that it would be the Black vote that would determine who the Democratic nominee would be and ultimately would determine who will be the next president of the United States of America. Hearing that response, those responses from these candidates aspiring to becoming president of the United States of America, I decided to title my few words this morning, "The History and Legacy of the African American Vote." We all know that voting is the language of American democracy. The act of voting validates us as citizens, have an equal standing, and confirms what it means to be an American. Well-known civil rights icon Congressman John Lewis referred to voting as the most powerful nonviolent tool we have in a democratic society. Yet, unlike any other group of people in the United States, the Black vote has been the object of much scrutiny, dissection, and suppression. The right to vote has been gained by blood, sweat, tears, as well as sacrifice, ever since the passage of the 15th Amendment in 1869 that prohibited the federal government and each state from denying a citizen the right to vote based on that citizen's race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Oh, but did I mention that this amendment was specifically referring to African American men and not women of any race? After the 15th Amendment was passed, equity was still sought for women to have the right to vote. So there was the women's suffrage movement, which was decades of fighting for women to win the right to vote. It took activists and reformers nearly 100 years to win that fight, and it wasn't until the victory was won did the women's suffrage movement end. Oh, but did I mention it was only for white women to vote? Black women at this time were still unable. It wasn't until the civil rights movement that women, Black women, all people were able to vote. The most difficult time for Blacks was when they had to pay poll taxes in order to vote or pass a literacy test. As a result, Mississippi cut the percentage of black men voting after Reconstruction from 90% to less than 6% in 1892. It was not until the Voting Rights Act was signed by President Lyndon Baines Johnson, aimed to overcome legal barriers at the state and local levels that prevented African Americans from exercising their right to vote as guaranteed under the 15th Amendment. And it was outlawed discriminatory practices that had been adopted in southern states after the Civil War, including literacy tests, were done away with. From this brief snapshot in history, one can see that the right to vote has been an uphill climb for African Americans, and even today, voter suppression efforts still exist. In 2016, 16 million Americans encountered problems voting. There were extremely long lines, malfunctioning voting machines, confusion over voter registration, voter intimidation, such as people being removed from voting rolls all over the country, and now voter ID laws. These obstacles and complications were targeted disproportionately toward eligible minority voters and contributed to the decline of registration and participation in the voting process. Still, African Americans must continue to climb. You see, the black vote is so important, and this is not to say everyone's vote is not important, because certainly every vote is important. The veterans in America do not just make sacrifices for the flag. It's really about the Constitution. You see, the flag is a shortcut method to exhibit what we all should support and stand for. And for many brave people, it's what they died for. A professor at Harvard Law School, Jill Lenore, advanced a very interesting proposal to improve voter turnout. She said, make National Election Day a holiday. She suggested Veterans Day be used as Election Day, as it would honor the sacrifices of veterans, and it would remind Americans that voting is a national duty, an obligation that would strengthen the political culture. However, I know there are those who do not want to have full participation still in the political process of America. However, one person, one vote is the idea behind the Constitution and its subsequent amendments, as it is the idea behind the sacrifices of veterans and the many people who died trying to ensure people would register to vote. It's the idea we all could support. This story, ladies and gentlemen, is not complete. While it is comforting for some folks to think that equity has been achieved in America for all people, the truth is not just yet. My beloved mom and dad, who are no longer with us, as you mentioned in the introduction, made us realize, my sisters and brothers, the importance of voting. It is as important as getting an education. My dad was a U.S. veteran. He served during the World War II. So he made us realize the sacrifices that he as a veteran and all others all over the country had made, and he wanted his children to participate in this process. It would be so wonderful if everyone could receive equality in life, as well as equity in life. You might wonder, what is equity versus equality? Are they the same? This is what I have learned. Equity and equality are two strategies we can use in an effort to promote fairness. Equity is giving everyone what they need to be successful, whereas equality is treating everyone the same. Equality aims to promote fairness, but it can only work if everyone starts from the same place and needs the same help. Let me share a classroom demonstration of a case for equity. There were 3 students, each wanting to see over a high fence that would enable them to receive a full educational scholarship if they could describe what was going on over that fence. Each of the 3 were given a 5-foot stool to stand on in order to assist them with seeing over the fence. One student was very tall, the second student was of medium height, and the third student was very, very short. All 3 students received the same size stool, but only one would receive the scholarship. The only one to receive the scholarship was the very tall one, because that 5-foot stool helped him and not the other 2. What does that story have to do with the African American vote? While the journey to voting rights is a source of pride, it also conjures up the hurt and psychic pain that has evolved over the years while fighting for equality when it comes to voting, without suppression standing in the way. The right to vote is a given, but the difficulties that continue for some to exercise this right must be eliminated. How do we eliminate the difficulties? By voting, and voting for causes you believe in, and for people who represent what you want and what you need. We need not just equality in voting, but equity. We need the voting process to be void of difficulties. This year, 2020, is significant, for it is the 150th year anniversary of the 15th Amendment, the 100th year anniversary of women's rights to vote, and the 55th year anniversary of the Voters' Rights Act. As we seek to end voter suppression and other difficulties in voting, you need to realize that your vote really does count, especially when you vote for the individuals, once again, who care about your interests, and individuals who care about the Constitution of the United States of America. You remember it. You remember the preamble. I learned it at age 9. You know it. Recite it with me. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do, ordain, and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. You remember? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we need equality. We need equity. We need fairness. I hope this brief history of the African American vote will lead to a legacy of the Black vote, making the Constitution of the United States a reality. Thank you for your indulgence. As I take my seat, I leave just one 4-letter word with you: vote.